Welcome to EYE on Sci-Fi podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 200 of EYE on Sci-Fi podcast. I am your host, Rod Faulkner, and thank you for joining me for this episode. Now, not only is this our 200th episode, but we also have a very special returning guest. Kieran Moreira is a filmmaker based in North Carolina, and he's making quite a name for himself in the independent film space. When Kieran was first on EYE on Sci-Fi podcast back in September of 2020, we had him on to talk about his first science fiction short film entitled GILL. GILL is the story of a headstrong young scientist who is grappling with wearing a malfunctioning teleportation suit while also coping with a very overbearing colleague via radio. Kieran returns to the podcast to talk about his latest exciting new project. It is another sci-fi short film, this time set post-apocalypse, entitled Lungs. Kieran shared with us his process for producing his latest project, including his experience with collaborating with a co-writer for the screenplay. He also shares the very valuable lessons that he learned during the pandemic while producing the short film during that tumultuous time that he brought forward into his production of Lungs. It was, again, another fascinating conversation with a very talented young man. So without further ado, please enjoy the EYE on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with filmmaker, director, and screenwriter Kieran Moreira. Kieran Moreira, welcome back, man, to EYE on Sci-Fi podcast.
It's so great to be here, Rod. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. In preparation for our second chat, I re-listened to our first conversation, and do you know that was back in September of 2020?
So long ago.
I know, but so much has happened in the pandemic. But for my audience, Kieran was on to first in September of 2020 to talk about his terrific sci-fi short film GILL that is on the Dust YouTube channel. And in the interest of full disclosure, I am a member of the curation team for the Dust YouTube channel. But it is a terrific film about a malfunctioning teleportation suit. I will put a link to it in the show notes of this episode. So if you haven't seen it, go see it, you all. So Kieran, we've got you back because you have got a brand new sci-fi short film entitled Lungs. Share what Lungs is about.
Thanks, Rod. We have a new short film called Lungs, and it's set in the near future, post-apocalyptic. Some sort of environmental disaster has befallen Earth, and we're picking up the pieces with a bunch of survivors, in particular our main character, Satchel. She's a former baseball player, but now she finds herself being pursued by this group of marauders who are hot on her heels for various reasons, which you'll come to understand later, and she's just trying to survive.
I had the opportunity to see a screener of Lungs, and I was really impressed by it. I see a lot of post-apocalyptic sci-fi narratives. I know you have as well. And what I like about the world of Lungs is that it really does feel fully realized. And I also like the more personal approach that you took. You do show us what the world looks like in its devastation, but then you quickly focus on Satchel and her circumstances. Now, one thing I did notice is that unlike GILL, which you wrote yourself and directed, you had a writing partner for Lungs. So share with me what that was like and what that process was like for you both.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to work with Nicole Jones, or NC Jones. We're actually friends that our friendship goes back from many short films ago, almost 10 years ago now. And she is a much better writer than I am. So I am always trying to figure out ways to work with people that are a step above me, that are much better, because I know they're going to ultimately elevate this project. And so in 2020, I part of the new, initially with the concepting, I was leaning into the things that I had access to. And then also trying to work with Nicole. And Nicole is a big baseball fan. And so I figured out, hey, there's this baseball field, there's this doctor's office. Is there a way I can combine these ideas to get her really excited about it? And so I shared a first draft with her in February, March of 2020, and was like, hey, what do you think? Like, I'd love to work with you. And she was immediately excited by the idea. And she really came in and just punched up dialogue, helped me rethink like scenarios or scenes where we could shorten or truncate moments. So it was very collaborative from that first draft moving forward. And she was involved from pre-production all the way to post-production and now in the marketing efforts.
Interesting. Fantastic. Where did the title of the short film come from? Lungs.
I seem to have this theme with protagonists struggling in these environmental disasters with breathing apparatuses. I don't know why that was, but that seems to be the theme that has subconsciously showed up in both GILL and Lungs. But initially, that wasn't the title. We had talked about a bunch of different options, like the long reliever was an idea, a play on baseball. But I think ultimately what we realized is it's about survival. It's about these characters who are faced with these situations where it's very bleak, and it's these glimmers of hope that we're trying to portray in these moments. And Lungs was this idea of, it's the name of the apparatus that everyone has to wear, but also it's just a very strong visceral, like visual that kind of catches your attention as well, initially where things come from.
Oh, great. Fantastic. I would say too that you also have a way of casting terrific actresses in your films, like GILL, terrific, and definitely in Lungs, also fantastic. And I don't want to get the actress's name wrong. Is it Ilia Jones?
Ilia.
Ilia Jones. She was phenomenal. Tell me about the casting process for her.
Yeah, Nicole and I had a pretty good discussion around cast. Like, we knew from the start that we wanted to feature a more diverse cast, people of color. And so that was really important to us, that we try to find these actors. And we're based in the North Carolina region, in the Raleigh region. Being a low budget short film or lower budget short film, we knew that we had to tap into our existing resources of actors, people in the theater programs, really cast our net wide. And we ended up using Backstage as well, just to really try to get the word out. And Ilia is a local actor. She hadn't done much projects prior to this. I know she's a writer herself and she's released short films as well. But I think this was like a big opportunity for her locally to be involved in a production. And so we put out a casting call. We saw a bunch of people, and just immediately, like, Ilia just had this presence. And we were doing all this virtually via Zoom because
Wow.
we couldn't meet. So we really were, there was probably a little bit of risk doing it that way, but also just for the safety of everyone. But she immediately, just her presence on screen, it was a no-brainer for Nicole and I. Oh no, she has range. She can nail this.
I definitely concur. And it's always important to you, Kieran, to source talent in your production team where you're located, and you are in North Carolina. Share why that's so important to you.
Sure. I think there's a number of different reasons. There's a practical element of we're trying to work with artists and talent that are local because it just makes production a lot easier. We're not paying for hotel rooms, that sort of thing, or we can cut costs there. But then two, I think the other element is that we know that this market in North Carolina is a strong market. A lot of people don't think about maybe North Carolina as a filming hub. A lot of our tax incentives had gone away, but there are a lot of talented folks. Maybe they work corporate or commercial jobs. I think there's a desire to do like narrative work. And so it was just a great opportunity to bring all these like-minded, talented people together to make something cool in our area, in our city.
I think that's wonderful that you do that. Now, speaking of your previous project, GILL, which it was released during the pandemic, I know that it was a very challenging production, but what did you learn from your production on GILL that you brought with you over to Lungs?
I think the biggest thing you can learn from doing any sort of production or short film is that no matter the preparation, as much preparation as you can do ahead of time, you will be set up for success. And that sort of manifested with weekly calls between Nicole and I. Every week we would run down what are the things we can tackle. We started a mood board, so it's a Miro board where we would drop ideas just so that we could translate what was in our heads to the screen, because everyone's interpretation of something is different. So we really tried to visualize things. We used a concept artist to bring the visuals to life in a way that people could get excited about. So really it was, I think, that preparation going into production. So we felt, okay, we're probably 85% like locked in. I know there's going to be some things here and there, but we felt incredibly prepared going into production. So we were confident in what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Preparation is so key in any endeavor that you might undertake. We touched on that Lungs is post-apocalyptic. So I'm interested to find out what you think makes Lungs and its world different from other similar post-apocalyptic films.
We looked at a lot, in that Miro board, we looked at a lot of different films where we were trying to figure out, okay, what are the things about like The Walking Dead or other projects that's, okay, this is near future, but not, technology hasn't advanced as far. So I think for Nicole and I, it was trying to define, okay, what does that world look like comparatively to other films? Is there similarities? Because in any genre there will be. I think for us to find the uniqueness, it was around that sort of environmental disaster where, and it's not specifically said in the film, but something has happened in which the air is not breathable. And so that was, I think, our way into making something slightly more unique or more nuanced in the post-apocalyptic genre.
I think that you succeeded, because what really grabbed me, and I'm trying to avoid spoiler territory here, but how the lead, Satchel, gets into a pretty complicated situation. And it really shows how you can have the best intentions, but things can really go wrong. What is the takeaway that you want audiences to get once they watch Lungs?
It was interesting making this film during the pandemic for a number of reasons, because it was a challenging time. It still is a challenging time for folks, especially making a film and bringing people together. You want to do that in a safe way. When you're reading stuff on the news initially about people hoarding masks or ignoring protocol or guidelines, doing things where they are jeopardizing other people, it makes you feel like it's survival of the fittest. And for us, we really wanted to question that. I think Satchel has found herself in a world in which she has done things she regrets. She had to do things to survive, and there is maybe a lack of redemption that she feels. And so by the end of the film, or at least as we work towards some of the conflict, it's really questioning that and seeing if there is a future in which that is not the status quo, in which collaboration and working together is the way forward.
And I really like how you ended the film, because there are no pat answers, but it did end on at least in the way that I interpreted it, a hopeful note. That things, of course, are incredibly complicated, and this is a new paradigm that everyone is trying to figure out how to literally survive, but that there was a glimmer of hope there. Was that intentional on your part?
Yeah, we knew that in a short film, there's only so much time where you can show a character's arc. I think what we wanted to at least show was that, okay, she may not have completely changed from this bad, savage past, but she's on the right foot forward in a new direction.
I can see that, definitely. Also, too, I just want to geek out a little bit on the production. I love the way that you showcase North Carolina, but the way that you made the devastated world of Lungs look was amazing. Can you go into what you did in order to realize your vision of this post-apocalypse?
Yeah, with an independent production, especially like a short film, budgets are limited. You don't have VFX artists to create like all these grand scenes, but you do need to hint at some of this elements to just show that there are some larger world. So I think for us, it was really nailing like the prop design. Tyler Jackson was one of our major prop designers. We also had some folks building who are actually in cosplay the world to build some of the guns. So it was, for Nicole and I, it was really making sure that what was on our mood board was communicated very well to these artists, and so that they could build this sort of rich backstory of props and costuming and all that sort of thing.
I love the fact that you guys had a mood board, let me just say.
Yes, and I can share it. It's massive. Like there's just so many different buckets of, oh, the mask, like what's the lore behind the mask? There's elements of that we're hoping to Easter egg into the film that, okay, we don't fully explain it, but there's reasoning behind why this thing is a certain way.
Do you plan on revisiting lungs anytime soon? I know I wouldn't object to that.
We've had a lot of folks tell us in screenings at festivals, hey, I want to know what happens to Satchel.
Same.
This feels like episode 1. And I think if we ever had an opportunity to make a feature version or a series, I think we would totally be on board with that.
So when can my audience expect to see lungs?
We're incredibly fortunate that we're back on the Dust Sci-Fi channel, and we launch on March 11th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So it'll be publicly available on YouTube. It's 11-minute short film, so hopefully you have 11 minutes to spare and can watch the film.
Oh, I encourage everyone to check it out because it is phenomenal. And again, March 11th on the Dust channel. And I'll put that date in the show notes too, just as a reminder for everyone. Now, I have an off the beaten path question for you, Kieran, because I do preparation myself before every chat. And I found a very early interview of you on YouTube. And you talked about an interesting concept that it was a bit of advice you were giving to other either aspiring or fledgling indie filmmakers. And you said the cavalry is not coming. And even though that sounds foreboding, I love the concept behind that. Elaborate on that.
Yes, the cavalry is not coming. And I found that little nugget from Mark Duplass in, I think it was a Sundance Labs talk that he gave maybe like a year or two ago. And it resonated with me because if you know anything about the Duplass brothers, they've really come up by just making things on their own. And essentially the advice is, do not expect someone to just give you thousands of dollars to make something like your grand opus in your head. That's not how it's going to be. The way you make progress is by taking ownership of what is available to you and what you can get started with right now. And that's how I've tried to, as a filmmaker, is, okay, the best film I can make is the one that's readily available to me now. And that's what I'll learn from. I think a lot of people find that as, oh, that's so disheartening, but I actually find it to be freeing because
I agree.
You're not relying on someone else to take charge of your film career.
And to dovetail on that, Ava DuVernay is one of my favorite directors that's working today. And I remember she talked about her beginning of her filmmaking career and being a director. And she said, hey, I didn't go to film school. But what I did, she was a public relations professional in the film business. And she said, I saw all of these films behind the scenes, and she thought to herself, I can do that. And her advice was, don't wait for permission, just do it. And I wholeheartedly agree, yeah. So that in combination with, hey, y'all, the cavalry ain't coming. Just go ahead and use what you got, get out there.
Exactly.
And your films are a testament to what happens when you do that, Kieran.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem. So where can my audience find out more about you online?
Yeah, we have a production company called Negative Split Films, and you can go to negativesplitfilms.com. You can also, for those who know the Portuguese and Irish last name, first name, KieranMoreira.com, and you can learn a little bit more about stuff I'm doing at work and also on the side.
Very good. And I will, of course, include those links in the show notes as well. Kieran, thank you so much. I always enjoy talking to you. We follow each other on social media, so, I like to keep tabs, but this was just really a wonderful occasion to get together with you in video this time and just share your movie making process and your new film. And I wish you all the best. So thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Rod. And again, much thanks to you for shining a spotlight on all the independent film that's happening. So I really appreciate you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care. That is it for our 200th episode, everyone. Thank you again for listening and watching. And of course, I am going to place all of Kieran's links in the show notes below so that you can watch all of his films. I highly recommend it. And also where you can keep tabs of his current and future projects and where you can follow him on social media. Also in the description of show notes below will be a link so that you can also sign up for our brand new newsletter. Monday through Friday, we will send to you a single solitary sci-fi or speculative gem like a book recommendation or a TV show pick that we think that you will enjoy, and each newsletter will only take you under 60 seconds to read. So make sure and sign up for that. Also, make sure to subscribe to the EYE ON SCI-FI podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you will be notified when we release new videos. So again, that's it for this episode, everyone. And until next time, make sure to take a break, escape the mundane, and enter the fantastic. Take care.